All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, when you think about the Baltimore Ravens, you think about a team that, for the most part, is a perennial Super Bowl contender. But the Ravens this season, they began this season once again with expectations to contend for the Super Bowl. However, this season is rapidly getting away from them. It's been an un-Raven like start to this NFL season as we've now seen Baltimore drop four out of their first five games. And in the process, the Ravens simply look like a shell of themselves. Uh, Not having the services of quarterback Lamar Jackson definitely hindered the Ravens' chances today when they took the field at home against the Houston Texans. But Baltimore's defense has been abysmal. Now, coming into play today, only the Dallas Cowboys were giving up more yards per game on average than the Baltimore Ravens were for this season. Now, I get it that the Ravens have been dealing with some injuries on that side of the football. But today, Baltimore welcomed one of the worst offenses in the NFL to town. And they proceeded to make the Houston Texans offense look like that of the 1999 St. Louis Rams. Now, coming into play today, the Texans were averaging less than 290 yards per game. But when this contest finished, Houston racked up 417 yards of offense. Now, some people, at the way that things began this season for the Texans, some people were questioning whether or not that Texans quarterback C.J. Stroud had actually peaked during his rookie year. Okay, but today against Baltimore, Stroud looked like that guy who captivated the NFL back in 2023 as he was 23 of 27 passing for 244 yards and four touchdown passes. And honestly, CJ Stroud made it look effortless. Okay. You look at this contest today, the Ravens were destroyed at home 44 to 10, courtesy of the Texans. It was 24 to 3 at the half. And I'll ask you, okay, when was the last time that you saw fans leave M&T Bank Stadium early? Okay, and it wasn't just a couple. There were plenty of empty seats, throughout the second half of this contest. And honestly, this is the result of a team that was already struggling with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and of course now things in just one game without Lamar have clearly gotten worse. Not having Nande Matabike, excuse me, defensively, he's out for the year. Their Pro Bowl defensive tackle. But even with him there, he had two sacks on the season. And even including today, the Ravens only have six sacks. And then on top of that, just one interception. That's not going to get it done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It simply is not going to get it done. And honestly, the proof is in the pudding. You look at things right now for the Baltimore Ravens. Defensively, they gave up 41 points in the Week 1 loss to Buffalo. They gave up 38 points in the Week 3 loss to Detroit. They gave up 37 points last Sunday to Kansas City, and then they gave up 44 points today to Houston. And to put that in its context, okay? You look at Kansas City. They dropped 37 points last week on the Ravens. The Chiefs' offense had been struggling and has been struggling for the bulk of the season until they faced Baltimore. You look at Houston. Houston put up 44 points today on Baltimore. For their first three games, the Texans didn't even manage that much. Okay, for the first three games of the season, for the Texans, they scored 38 points. Okay, and they got it going last week in their win against the Titans. But then again, this offense has been struggling, and I think today, no disrespect to the Texans, but this was more about the problems, the continuing problems with this Ravens defense. They haven't been able to create pressure. Okay, they haven't been taking the ball away. They haven't been stopping anybody. Okay, and of course now that has put the onus on second year defensive coordinator Zachary Orr, because he's got to try to find a way to get this ship righted. And I've got news for you. It's not going to get easier for the Ravens. They welcome the Los Angeles Rams to town next Sunday. And when you think about the mind of Rams head coach Sean McVay and the quarterbacking ability of veteran quarterback Matthew Stafford, and then you think about Puka Nakua, the dynamic Rams receiver, they if the Ravens defense is not on point, that Rams offense will carve them up like a Christmas ham. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And now you look at Baltimore as a whole. They're 1-4. Okay, they are indeed fighting an uphill battle. Why? Because we're talking about the fact that only 16 teams in NFL history have come back from a 1-4 start in order to make the postseason. All right, and you put that in context with where the Ravens have been in recent years. They've been right there. They haven't been able to get over the hump. You think about 2 years ago, they went 13-4. They hosted the AFC Championship game for the first time in franchise history. They came up short against the eventual Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, Baltimore went 12-5. Of course, they went out there, made the big acquisition as they signed Derrick Henry. Everything was set up for them, and I feel like when you have a playoff loss, like the Ravens did last January to Buffalo, it is very difficult to overcome that. It looked like the Ravens were going to put those demons to bed in week number one before it came apart for them in the fourth quarter of the opener against Buffalo, and they have simply not recovered from this. So, honestly, at this point, the onus is on John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh is a veteran head coach. John Harbaugh clearly is the best head coach that the Ravens have had in their history. But nonetheless, he's got to try to find a way to get this thing turned around. And it's not going to be easy now because Lamar Jackson is expected to be out for a couple of more weeks. And hamstring injuries, you can't just snap your finger and expect the guy to come back and be ready, especially a guy like Lamar and what he does on offense for Baltimore. Pick your poison. The Ravens' defensive issues. Derrick Henry's ball security all of a sudden this year. Now you have an injured Lamar Jackson at quarterback. This season is getting away from the Baltimore Ravens before it really even starts, because this is just the beginning of October. And I know things overall aren't looking good in the AFC North. The Bengals, they're trying to hold it up without Joe Burrow at quarterback. And of course, easier said than done. The Cleveland Browns continue to be Cleveland Browns. But nonetheless, this division has basically been put on a platter for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, and it's up to them to try to take advantage of it. Two Pro Bowl quarterbacks are injured. Another team is struggling. And if you're the Steelers, you have to try to take advantage of it. And if Pittsburgh does what they're supposed to do, they'll bury a team like Baltimore. And then, of course, the Ravens, if they can try to get things turned around, they will have to then focus on a potential wild card spot. But nonetheless, the way things are looking, even with a healthy Lamar Jackson, if Baltimore cannot stop anybody, it's very difficult to say you can consistently win games 44-40 in the National Football League. That recipe is not going to work. There's too much talent, even with the injuries for the Ravens. There's too much talent on that side of the football for them to be 1-4 at this standpoint. But at the end of the day, this is who they are. Like I said, I want to see how this team competes next Sunday when they host the Rams, because Lamar Jackson or not, they should be embarrassed with what they did today at home against the Houston Texans. Again, the Texans offense has basically struggled all season long. And the Texans offense looked like a fine oiled machine. And it was the same thing with Kansas City's offense last week. We're talking about 81 points in the last two games alone. The Ravens have not held one single opponent under 30 points all season long. That ain't going to get it done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, like I said, I want to see how this team comes back and competes next Sunday as they host the Rams. And of course, that's an important game. You don't want to go 1-5, and you also want to try to have some momentum for yourselves going into the bye. But nonetheless, if Baltimore is able to get that win, they're 2-4. They go into their bye, and then there's a possibility of getting Lamar Jackson back after the bye week in week number 8 when they host Chicago. But nonetheless, slow start for the Baltimore Ravens. They are indeed fighting an uphill battle in the AFC. They're 1-4. There's still time to try to get this ship righted. I totally get it. But nonetheless, they've got some work ahead of them, and it starts on the defensive side of the football. They've got to try to find a way to stop somebody. Easier said than done. But let's see what the Ravens will be able to do. But folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time now to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. And speaking of those subscribers, we're right on the cusp, folks. Just a couple of more, and we reach that magical number of 1,000. And like I always say, your support is always immensely appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. Also, if you're on Instagram, you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And just like it is on the X, you give me that follow, I'll give you that follow right back. And also, if you're on Facebook, be sure to check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.